So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Sandeep Sharda, who's co-founder at Pathways. So, firstly, Sandeep, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Pathways, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure, no worries. So I am the co-founder of Pathways, along with my other co-founder, Dr. Amanda McKennell. And essentially what we do in a nutshell is connect pioneering and progressive life science companies like big pharma and biotechs with niche expertise within academic research. So this could be anything from helping with R&D from drug discoveries to food supplements to medtech wearables, and it's not limited by region or just using the top Russell Group universities. This is a non-biased system to really accelerate innovation within science.
Absolutely wonderful. Sounds amazing. For anyone that's watching, get on the Pathways website, which is pathwaysopen.com. Have a look around. It's really fascinating what you guys do. So just to help me and maybe people watching to understand what sort of client, give you an idea of sort of great clients that you would work with. Not necessarily the names, but the type of client, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So it's quite diverse. Life sciences covers a lot of things. We describe it as anything that goes inside or on the body, and that could also include animals as well, not just people.
Yeah.
So, for a great example, we helped a big pharma company who had huge headquarters in Japan. So this is a multi-billion-dollar turnover organization, and they were looking for a very specific kind of scientist who had knowledge on a certain protein to help with the drug discovery they were doing. And what happened is despite the fact that they have so much resource in terms of finances and even their own in-house laboratories and you name it, they could get it. We did a kind of pilot for them to find who in the world would be the most suitable and most likely to succeed on this specific project. So we got back a list of people, and the top kind of candidate we found for them was actually based in the city that they're headquartered in, and they had no idea that this person even existed. So it just goes to show that this kind of system of knowledge transfer and ensuring that you're not wasting your time on redundant research is a very difficult thing to actually uh, implement. So there's a huge need for this, and it's not just the big pharma company. So I can draw a kind of parallel, but to something completely different. So we were helping this very, very early stage femtech company. So they had no funding, no revenue being turned over, brilliant group of co-founders, and all they really needed is kind of direction. So part of our system is also includes a bit of consulting. So my co-founder Amanda, she is an amazing scientist. She's spoken at global events within her niche biomedical discipline. So she knows what she's talking about. She's a scientist. So if you have any scientific questions, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer them.
Okay.
Um, Amanda would be able to.
That's fine.
And what we're able to do for them is find them a kind of starting point. So what they wanted to do was eventually build this product so women at home could test thoroughly their hormone levels, which could be anything from estrogen to finding out if there's issues with their menstrual cycles or how it's affecting them. A very holistic kind of view of their health. And so we were able to put them in contact with someone at a university who would be able to do this kind of proof of concept for them. And off the back of that, they've now won investment from VC firms. They've got connections with academic institutes that they had no contact with before. So it's a very holistic solution to getting the knowledge that you need to innovate as fast as you can and contribute to things like life-saving drugs and new at-home healthcare services and apps and innovations. So yeah, we're very excited about the clients that we've worked with and the clients that we're going to work with in the future.
Amazing. Amazing. I mean, it just sounds fascinating. I mean, you've got me excited. I'm trying to think of things. I would love to employ a very, very clever scientist for some reason. I can't think. I feel I can't think of one at the moment. Although I do say, and I know that this is not appropriate to you guys, but I always say to people what we do when I describe how we help businesses grow. I say it's simple stuff that works. I say we don't need to do rocket science. But we can get you to a size that if you really want a rocket scientist, you can employ one. We can get you to that size. But obviously, and I don't appreciate you wouldn't supply those, but it's just almost like you could, but just be able to find these people. I just think it's wonderful. So, and that
Yeah.
was, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so eventually what we'd like to do is expand into different areas of science. So
Sure.
we started with this one within life sciences because that is Amanda's expertise. So it just made sense for us to go down that route.
Brilliant.
And, I've always wanted to contribute to things like that, but I've never done so within academia or my career. My career is in software engineering, software consulting.
Brilliant.
So it's just great to be able to contribute to that. And eventually we want to expand and contribute to things like rocket science, for example.
Brilliant.
And just a very holistic view on science in general, because we want to see the world advance and progress and do all
Brilliant.
these cool things that people say we could do in the future, but we want to do it now. So that's part
Brilliant.
of the motivation for this company.
Great. Well, take my number. I'm sure I'll be calling you in a few years' time when we want to when we want to rocket science. But and I'm just thinking that describing what you do, that the advances in the ability to communicate across continents must have been exactly this is enabling something like this. I guess in 20 years ago, it would have been almost impossible for that company to find the scientist that in the end was actually in their own city. Um,
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. A lot of different elements to that. So, first of all, absolutely yes. 20 years ago, it would have been much harder.
yeah.
Nowadays, we have access, or at least ways to access a lot of data.
Yes.
But making sense of data in technology is still a huge challenge, which is
Yeah.
why it's one of the most fast growing portions of the technology sector, which is big data, and doing something with it to make it more valuable, because huge loads of unstructured raw data from different sources is actually not that useful. But what
Yeah.
we do in our system, which of course implements AI, we wouldn't be a tech company if we didn't use AI, but I'll go to that a bit later. But essentially, what we do is take a load of data, a load of different parameters from a load of different academics, and we make sure that we find the right criteria for specific projects. So we don't look at things on a surface level. So a lot of people who have tried to do similar things, what they'll do is look at very basic information, like how many publications does a scientist have, or which university is a scientist at. This is a very kind of exclusive way of
Yeah.
looking at the academic sector.
Yeah.
There's so many more things that you have to look at. I'm not going to give too much away, but some of those things
No.
could be, who their supervisor is, how relevant are they currently? So have they done anything recent at a conference, and how impactful was it? Um, all these things like who's in their network, or have they released anything new that no one else has, and
Yeah.
just dozens of different things that we put into these searches to make sure that they are going to be the most appropriate to fulfill the
Brilliant.
needs of anything from big pharma to, as I say, small startup companies.
Brilliant. Really fascinating. We could probably talk. Well, I would love to talk about this all morning. But if maybe Sandy, if we start at the beginning, if you talk a little bit about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you.
Yeah, sure. So my background is in software engineering. So I started in tech about 7-ish years ago as a junior developer. Got a very full view of the software development lifecycle. Then went into more product and delivery focused roles. And then during COVID, or just before COVID, I met my co-founder in more of a social setting. Understood kind of what she does, and off the back of COVID, what happened is that we saw vaccines being created in 24 to 36 months, which
Yep.
was incredible.
Yes.
Usually, what would happen is that vaccines would take 15 to 20 years to get to that
Yep.
stage.
Yep.
And we were basically of the mind that, what we've done here is fuel collaboration globally to save about 19.7 million lives, was the estimate of
Oh,
how many
well.
lives were saved because of that collaboration. So we thought, why can we not do that all the time? Why does it take a global pandemic for there to be this level of collaboration and this sophistication of communication between
Yep.
biotech, startups, academic institutions? It doesn't need to be that way. So my motivation personally came from the fact that I've always wanted to contribute to science. I didn't go into it at university. I did accounting, which was really boring, so I left. It wasn't very fulfilling for me. And my co-founder, who is a very good academic, understood that there was this gap that needed to be bridged between industry and academia. There's so much interesting research that happens universities in people's PhDs or their extended research, and it just gets shelved.
Yeah.
It's rarely commercialized. And
Yeah.
then on the other hand, you've got even big pharma companies who have, life-saving drugs that they're developing, and they're taking so long
Yeah.
because they're using huge, corporations to kind of go for recruitment or building in-house labs when this already exists within
Yes.
academia. So what we do is just essentially try to disrupt this pattern of just using these in-house networks of, who do you know that does this, or going to conferences, which is great. We encourage conferences. That's a great way to share knowledge across the world. But why not fuel this faster by cutting all that out at first and honing in on that
Yeah.
expertise? So you save time, you save cost, you save on recruitment. It's so good for both sides of the coin here. So you've got industry rapidly producing life-saving drugs and new wearables, and finding out more about people's bodies so that research could be used for really interesting technologies like digital twins, for example, which is a topic for a whole other discussion. And then you've got academics who, they struggle to find funding, they struggle to commercialize their research. It's a very traditional sector that really needs revamping in order for it to be more valuable to society. It used to be that, universities were seen as not just a business like they are now, but a place where knowledge is discovered, and tests are run, and hypotheses are run and tested, and that would lead to more innovation, lead to products, and lead to commercialization. But that doesn't happen as much anymore. So there is no reason why that can't happen.
I mean, it really is fascinating. So what I think I'm hearing here is that there is quite often what happens is if somebody wants to develop something, they often start from scratch rather than finding the people that have already halfway or a period through that sort of research and engaging with them. So there must be a whole bunch of reworking, relearning, and redevelopment that doesn't need to be the case if you can find people around the world that are already in play in these particular areas. Is that right? Is it or
That's
close?
that's that's absolutely right. Yeah, and then just to build off that as well, if someone's developing something completely brand new and nobody has the research on it,
Yep.
how do you even begin to understand who's going to be the best person to start it?
Yep.
So that's another thing that we in our system is really good at. So we can kind of spot what trends are happening and who's at the forefront of those trends. So if you have a very specific niche, therapy that you're developing, or maybe you're looking into supplements and how they've affected people, how they do affect people, but that study's never been done before, we can then put you in touch with an institution that has everything in place for that to happen. So
Yes.
it's got the people, it's got the resources, it's got the equipment, but you don't think about them because maybe they're, not a top university, or maybe you just don't know that they even exist. But our system will find them and
Brilliant.
ensure that you have the best possible head start to starting the R&D.
Brilliant. Absolutely wonderful. Um, so, what as you've grown as you've grown the business now, and as you're growing it, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome so far?
Yeah, I mean, right from the start, it was very challenging. So we have no direct business experience between us as co-founders. I mean, I've worked for big corporations throughout my career as a software consultant, so that things like NHS, all the way to entertainment companies like Sky, and everything in between as well, very technical products as well. And Amanda comes from a very, very academic background. So the challenges for us have been, first of all, nobody tells you in a startup how much admin there is to get through, even right at the start. Registering your company, a
Yep.
founders agreement, how to get resources, where to get them, which ones are free, what's going to tax you, what's not going to. It's just an absolute minefield. And that's probably been the biggest uh, slowdown for us in terms of getting to what we want to do. There's all this like red tape in front of it. So we want to innovate. We want to help companies. We want to help the West
Yeah.
Yorkshire region collaborate internationally. But there's all this kind of regulation around it. So some of the biggest blockers recently has been things like accounting. I know I said I did accounting at university, but I also did say I did not enjoy it. So it's something I really tried to stay away from.
On that one.
Amanda's actually now the finance kind of person in our company. We've hired an accountant, which is a tip for anyone with a startup company. Honestly, get accounting advice as soon as you can, or an accountant as soon as you can afford it. Also, a big stopper for growth is knowing how to strategize what you want for your company in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is a lot of startup founders will go for things like investment. So that's kind of like as soon as they start, they're like, we need VC funding, we need angel investment. And we were the complete opposite. So we wanted to, bootstrap completely, meaning, fund ourselves, get revenue. We've barely put any of our own money into the business because we've been very good at efficiently sourcing funds that are essentially, I say free, but essentially free. So, for example, grants through the UK government.
Great.
Now,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of controversy around that kind of area. There's been a lot of arguments stating that it's quite difficult to get funding from the UK government, or even just in the UK in general, compared to somewhere like North America, where there is VC funding and they seem to like give it away. Not so much in recent years, but traditionally, they'll throw money at a problem and see what sticks. It's not really like that in the UK.
Yeah.
So that was quite difficult to understand if we wanted to go down that route of trying to get VC funding. What ended up happening is that we've won quite a few grants through schemes like UKRI, which is part of the UK's Department of Science.
Brilliant.
So just a shout out to my co-founder Amanda, who recently won the Women in Innovation Award, which is amazing. I think only like less than 1% of people who applied got that award, and that's catapulted us to be able to grow the product. So we're now working with the National Institute Center for Data, NICD. I don't know if I got the acronym right. Sometimes they get it wrong, so I don't feel that bad not getting it right.
I feel like I'd like to correct you, but I've no idea. So you.
Yeah, it's basically they do a lot of data science, really cool stuff.
Brilliant.
And they're helping build out our AI platform. So shout out to them. We're doing that over the course of this year. We've actually just kicked off the project officially. I want to say this week. It's been a bit of a blur, but I think this week. So that's awesome.
Have you managed to receive any grant or loan funding locally? We work quite closely with Leeds City Council and Leeds Council and the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and there are. You may well be aware there are, again, for any sort of business, there's quite a lot of support available, which I think is wonderful for any business like yours that is that in going through that bootstrapping process.
Yep, absolutely. So I'll for any startups that are watching, especially in the West Yorkshire region, we have worked with West Yorkshire Combined Authority. We've got quite a few resources through them in terms of mentorship, and then through things like Adventure, which is for very early stage startups as well, which is also part of closely related to that scheme, is a great one to kind of learn a bit more about, your basics of how to begin that business, where to focus, which is really important as well, because, our focus at the start was very different to what it is now.
Yeah.
So I think getting that right at the start is really important. I'm currently sat in the NatWest Accelerator in Leeds.
Oh, okay.
So this is a free accelerator, so I get things like office space, I get business mentorships, networking events. Networking is another huge thing that we've learned to do. We're still working on it. We're not the best at it, but it's a really important skill, I think, as a startup. We're also on we've just finished the go-to-market accelerator, which was run by the Rose Bowl Knowledge Exchange, which is part of Leeds Beckett and also with Leeds University, another free accelerator, which had a lot of mentorship. Again, and things like office space and just a few free resources and contact with professors in marketing and accounting and things like that. So, you've really got to search these out, though. They don't make it that easy to find these things. You really have to get involved in your local business networks to find out what's going on. So that was a big learning curve for us as well, because at first we were starting to, trying to source these things ourselves just by Googling and what have you, but it didn't really work that well. But once we got into these communities, we got a lot more access to resources, a lot more networks in place as well. So that's a big tip for me.
Brilliant. And any other key learnings on growing a business, whether it's from challenges or the success you have? What are some of the things you've highlighted so far?
I think in terms of growing our business, I think it's really important to first of all have that focus. So, are you going to be the kind of company that first of all wants to make sales rather than raise funding? And that helps you strategize on how to do your growth. So, if you're going to grow and you want VC funding, you're not really going to be focused on sales. What you're really going to be focused on is things like pitching the value of your company
Yeah.
to certain businesses, um, getting that market validation, getting that product market fit, and then earning some revenue based off that or getting quick sales. And it doesn't have to be maybe as scalable or as focused on that side of the business as maybe we are with bootstrapping, because obviously you can only put so much money yourself into a business. You need to be run by revenue, and then obviously those grants that are supplemented have really helped.
Yeah.
So in terms of like growing, what we want to do next is hire more people. So we want to hire more scientists. We want to hire more software engineers. It's great having these engineers currently working through a grant for us at the moment, but that's not a long-term solution. We would also advise to get a kind of co-founding team in place. It's really hard to do this by yourself, especially as a B2B tech company. It slows, sales cycles are very slow with big corporations. So
Yes.
even if you make a sale, it's not going to happen for like potentially 6 months.
Yeah. I can imagine.
So being able to bring in different skill sets, I think, is really important. So
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a technical background. Amanda's got domain expertise. We also have a non-exec director who has a much better technical background than me. So, he's helping out with certain elements of the platform. So it's really good to have people in place who have different skill sets, because it's hard to hire that expertise right at the start. But eventually, once you start, like, bringing in some cash, it's nice because you can, look for who you want. We've recently brought on like a freelance marketer, so she's been really helpful, giving us a different skill set as well, which has been great because it's so hard to keep on top of everything as a co-founder. So there's social network, building your own personal brand as well as the
Yes.
company brand. People at the company, we want people from the company to go to conferences to find these companies and make contact with these big pharma clients who don't even know what we're doing. We want people to keep in charge of things like admin. So having that skill set and not having to learn about it so much, and having that easy knowledge transfer within the team at the start, I think is a really important step for setting yourself up for success in terms of growth.
Brilliant. Perfect. Great. Couldn't agree more on everything you said there, because it is, we help businesses grow through, start all the way through. And it's really interesting differentiation you made there in terms of whether you're going to go for VC funding or look at bootstrapping and go for organic growth. Because it's really, and I never really thought of it from that perspective of the main purpose is to highlight company value. Although most investors I know I work with, one of their first questions in general is how many sales have you made? So I think a pre-sale, and it doesn't necessarily, I believe, doesn't necessarily affect investment, but it does affect evaluation. The
Yeah.
ability to have made some sales and proven the model will add, I would suggest, multiples to valuation, and therefore you could get more money for less necessarily equity in the business. So having gone through that process, I think done what you've done already is really, really key. Even if ultimately, even if anybody, I'm not suggesting you, ultimately then takes funding later on to accelerate that growth, I think, personally, it's good to have made the sale and mastered all parts of that flow of business. So brilliant. And you mentioned one or two there, and I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you specifically?
Yeah, it's a tough question because I do take away different skills and different
Yes.
opinions from different people. So I'll mention a few rather than just one because it's so hard to do that. I will say I used to be part of this company called One Day, and this was right at the start before I even knew what business I kind of wanted to go into, what kind
Yep.
of business I wanted to start. And they set you up with someone who's usually had a startup or two and been through the whole process themselves and achieved success. And his name was Mike Pryke. He was an experienced startup founder in different industries, and he was very much pushing to just get stuff done. Like fake it till you make it in
Yeah, yeah,
quotes,
yeah.
loose quotes kind of thing. So, send out pilots of your product, get quick feedback from these big clients, ask for help from them, um, see what sticks, see what doesn't. So I think having that kind of bias to action mindset was really important and took some convincing as well because, me and my co-founders are quite logical. We like to think things through. Um, so not necessarily have that kind of burning desire to just, hit the ground running right off the bat and just be like, we don't have anything in place, but will you buy this product from us kind of thing. But it's actually really, really important to do that. You figure out so much by doing that and talking to your potential customers or potential investors or whatever it is. So that was really good. And then other mentors and coaches that we've had, through UKRI, we've had some great mentors who've also had startups or have worked with a lot of startups. We're working with these two ladies called Wendy and Chantel, who've really been helping us hone in on our messaging to clients and how we're designing processes for our business and also extracting as much value as we can from clients and also providing as much value as we can for clients as well, without having to, overhaul what our products are, and finding new kind of channels to, sell our product and show our services. So that's also been really important. Um, yeah, I mean, those are just a few off the top of my head, but
Brilliant.
yeah, I've had a lot of people give me a lot of useful advice.
Brilliant.
On the journey.
And I think the key thing, and it's a great example again, is having an open mind, being open to any form of advice. There isn't any rights or wrongs, and there isn't only one way to do anything. So finding our way, I think, is really important. And therefore taking advice from everywhere. And I love because I love the quote. We're going to come on to quotes in a second, but one of my favorite quotes is the mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. Which I appreciate. Maybe and so can we that whether from your mentors or from anything you've read or watched, do you have any favorite quotes or sayings that you catch yourself using a lot about business or success or life in general?
I actually thought about this question before this interview, and honestly, no, there's no specific quotes. One saying that like kind of sticks out to me is JFDI, but
Yeah.
because that a bias fraction in startups at least is the way to go. Like
Yes.
we've seen, you just get so much feedback, so much learning, so many metrics, so many statistics. The more you do, the more you get back, and the more you can pivot or change
Yeah.
things and try different things. So I think yours is great as well. I think having an open mind that kind of fits in the same kind of theme is you've got to test it, you've got to fail fast to succeed at some point. I think sticking with the same thing you started out doing, I can't believe that ever works for anyone. All the success stories I've heard from huge tech companies, they started completely differently to what they do now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be
Yeah.
our advice. I mean, just to put it into context for Pathways, we started off trialing our product for big pharma companies, and doing a very specific thing with and providing data that we thought was really useful. And then the feedback we got was that, it was great feedback. The product was still really well received and stuff. But what ended up happening is that because we were so early on and had no infrastructure, no product, no website, our company wasn't even registered at this point. And B2B sales takes 6 months. We were like, well, this is not going to happen, is it really? Like, we can't spend 6 months trying to sell to these kind of clients. So what we ended up doing is reaching out to smaller companies who are more willing to
Yeah.
use resources like this that are available to them because they also don't have that much infrastructure in place. So
Yep.
they're more easygoing about getting that value quickly rather than having to go through this, kind of rigmarole of taking months to decide through legal teams
Yes.
and comparing competitors and things like that.
Yes.
So that's a big one for us is pivoting when you think you could and just trying it and see if it works.
Yeah, it's a big thing. It's try stuff. I always say there aren't any, certainly from a market perspective, and I don't just mean marketing, I mean sales and working with clients. The only guru, there are no gurus. The only guru you need is the market itself. If you try enough things and see what works and does what doesn't, and invest in stuff that does, that's the market telling us where we need to be. So, obviously it's good to take help and advice on what those things we might try, but just try lots of stuff, and
Yeah.
ultimately The market will tell us. What is interesting, and it'd be interesting to know where you feel you are in this process. Is we work with lots of businesses. I work with them where so they're on or about or are past the hockey stick point of this. So what I would describe is when we start a business, and be interested to see where you feel you are. That without necessarily massive increases in revenues, it's there's a lot of hard work. It's all about how hard we work, as you said, JFDI, just get on and do a lot of stuff, and it's about us and we need that to be because there isn't necessarily without funding again we replace funding with effort, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
I don't mean people with funding don't work hard, but what I mean is if the money isn't there, I'm going to have to do it because there's no one else to pay. So we get to this point, and then when we start to take off, the biggest challenge we find with business people, entrepreneurs, is because everything up to that point has been about how hard they work. And in fact, we're culturally told, just work hard and you'll be fine, is the thing we're told. The point being that at this knee point, if it still remains about how hard we work, we become the barrier to growth for the business because we're still looking to what we can do to make that happen rather than, it's quite a fundamental change of mindset because it goes from what do I do to who do I need, if that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen that already, or you can see it coming, or you're at that point. But it's a fascinating change, and it's quite hard for many people. It's really quite hard to change that immediate reaction of, oh, I've got to do, something needs to be done. I'll get stuck in, which is fine here, but it's not great somewhere put here. Is where would you say you are right now?
Um, it's a good question. I think I totally get what you mean about, knowing who you kind of need at some point. And I think we've definitely recognized that amongst ourselves. For things like sales outreach, we are not salespeople. We don't know how, we know there's a huge amount of value in what we do, but we don't know how to position that and explain it very well. Obviously we've got better at that, but now we're currently, we've had sales mentoring and had someone put a sales process in place for us. So we're still very near that, takeoff kind of point.
Great,
I think we are just about to hit quite a bit of growth. We've just started turning over some revenue.
brilliant,
Um, so that's obviously a great sign for us. Um, so yeah, I think we're at our point where we should be maybe not catapulting, but growing a lot quickly than we have. We've got a lot of things in place now, like the sales system or like our LinkedIn growth is getting there, and our
brilliant.
networks are getting there, and we've got these resources in place, so we've got kind of the foundation that we need to be able to reach out to people, explain those things, and we've had some testimonies and things like that. So we think
Yes,
we're at a position now where we can get traction that's not just from our outbound, but also we have had referrals and things like that. So we are getting that traction more naturally, and I think that's a really good indicator that we are about to grow quite a bit. So yeah, still very early on, but I think maybe just about at that
brilliant,
hockey stick point. So yeah, we'll see. Only the next few months will tell, but that's
brilliant.
the hopes.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with that next phase of growth. And we talk about quotes and sayings, but are there any other favorite books or podcasts that you read or follow around, again, business, sport, life in general for personal growth or business growth?
Um, honestly, yes and no. So, like, I've seen the odd podcast here and there about business. There's the Stephen Bartlett one, which I really take with a pinch of salt. Honestly, um, a lot of startup founder stories and business growth stories are very um, anecdotal, and they're very one in a million kind of things. So I think people get hung up on
Yeah,
how realistic some of these stories are or how common they are. And they don't go into full detail about the fact that a lot of the time people are quite lucky when they hit huge success with startups. I'm not saying that those people don't work hard. Everyone works hard at a
100%.
startup. Everyone puts in 120% every day when you have a startup. But some people will just find that person in their network that was the key to their success, or some people will just get a big client who takes a punt on them. Like, people don't seem to think that far through, and they'd be like, "Oh, if I just work like this guy, I'll make
Yeah,
I'll make millions or whatever. The business will grow really hard." So yes and no. Honestly, to be completely honest, I when I'm working on my startup, I'm doing like real life kind of um, gathering of knowledge and resources and talking to people who are going to immediately affect my business. I really only use those kind of shows and resources. Sometimes I have read books on certain things, but they're more practical, like something on marketing or
Yes.
something like that. I think podcasts can be good because they cover a wide range of topics, and
Yeah.
especially ones like these that are more local based, and you hear the real stories of what it's actually like. So these kinds of things, I definitely listen to. And then, honestly, like guilty pleasure kind of thing is like watching stuff like The Apprentice and Dragon's Den because I just
Brilliant.
think it's kind of funny. The Apprentice is like the worst example, honestly, of
Yeah.
people in business and how it should be run. But yeah, it's fun to watch.
The great thing, I completely agree. I've always said The Apprentice is an it's clearly entertainment, but the one area of business related education that is fascinating is communication and behavior, and you see the whole range of that through almost every episode, and it is quite
Yeah,
interesting how people interrelate, how they, the sales task, how people do successfully. Not again, it's not a process to sell, but it's interesting things like I always remember that I think it was the first one, and they were doing the selling. I think it was selling flowers and stuff, and the guy that I think he came close to winning, he was just walking down the street. It was the end of the thing, and they had to sell everything before, they had 10 minutes to sell, and was walking down the
mm,
street, and his first point, and it's a really common point of sales, effective sales, is commonality. Is find something that's a common bond between us, and that builds trust, and therefore the sales process is more effective. And he just walked down the street, and I remember him saying to this guy, he said, "Oh, you're a plumber." It was clearly at the back of his van, and he was, "Oh, you're a plumber. My uncle was a plumber." Oh, and that was how he started. And then he goes to somebody else and say, "Oh, are you Greek? Oh, my auntie's Greek." And it was just this. He was just the first point, and as I say, I mean, it's not an educational program, but it's interesting to see how people's behaviours change and things that work and don't work. So I completely agree. They're fun, aren't they? I mean, they are fun. But again, the Dragon's Den, again, we were talking earlier. One of the first things the dragons will ask almost every presenter is, how many sales have you made? Because
yeah,
when they're looking at in investing at that point, it is, have you proven your concept? And I think that's so important. Not for everybody. I totally get there is pre-revenue VC funding, but by its nature, in many ways, it is more of a punt than it is a really clear investment in growth, I would suggest. And it's more, if I spend my money over 10 businesses, one of them might become a
yeah,
unicorn, and that's fine. But when we get to a point where and we get to a point where we've demonstrated the business and the business model and has value in the marketplace, then it's very much an investment with an expectation of growth for both the investor and the business taking investment. Brilliant.
yeah.
And Sandy, what would you say you've learned? Sorry, no, there was something you said there earlier. I was going to come back to because it did resonate with me, and the idea that you rightly say some of the podcasts are, people have had this stunning success, and just because I might do something, they may accept it. It was really interesting because one of the reasons I joined my organisation right at the start. So I had what is a reasonably successful business career. It's not stellar. So I think we went from 13 years, we went from naught to 12 million turnover, over 100 people, and we sold to Siemens, the big German
Wow.
engineering company. So that all sounds great, and it was great. It was exciting, and it was great in lots of parts. It nearly killed me because I didn't
Mm,
understand how to scale a business. I knew how to, we did some stuff, and it always was clear for me when I left, and what we did some traveling. But when I really decided what I wanted to do next, I wanted to help people grow businesses, but I actually thought, even though I could trade off what would sound like a reasonable success, appreciate we're not 120 million or 1.2 billion, but it was enough for people. But there was so much, as you rightly say, there was luck in that. There was a whole bunch of stuff. And I thought, between you and I, it was almost like arrogance to go, just because I've done that, I could talk to somebody about growing businesses, because I could tell you how we grow our business, but alongside that, I'd have to tell you how lucky we were at some point and being in the same room.
yeah,
No, I really resonate with that. And I think it's, as I think you highlighted, is be open to learning, but don't necessarily think there's only one way. And if I do, as you said, exactly what they did, I'm going to be successful. So I found it fascinating. And so on the mode of learning, what would you say you've learned about yourself on your journey so far, Sandeep?
Oh,
That's a hard one, isn't
it is a hard one. Yeah.
it?
About myself, I think that I do have the ability to learn new skills, but I've also learned about myself that it's okay not to have these skills. There are
Yes,
other people and other resources that can help you with things.
absolutely.
So you don't need to know everything. I think what you said about like, there is a fine line between like confidence, optimism, and kind of arrogance. And I do see a lot of people who have this kind of air about them that they just assume they're gonna make it, which I think is kind of good. But at the same time, it's like everyone will tell you a different thing when you're looking for advice or looking for a way to be successful. And I think one thing I've learned about myself is that I'm pretty decent now over the course of having a startup is um, looking at a resource or listening to someone and finding out what's actually valuable from what they've given me.
Yeah,
I think at the start, because I didn't know anything um, at all, I was just taking everything anyone said to me because clearly they were had much more expertise than me, and just going along with that. But now it's more like, okay, I've been here before a little bit. I know this is kind of not going to work, or it's not. There's
yeah,
not enough value in doing this for the effort that I'm going to have to put in.
I agree.
Um, and yeah, also I think I've learned about myself that um, I'm more resilient than I thought.
Brilliant.
I'm usually quite a sensitive person when it comes to most things. I'm not going to lie, but in startups, especially in business, like you have to be quite resilient.
Yeah.
And I've learned that I can be, and learned ways to kind of cope with when I need to be as well. So that's a big one for me.
Brilliant. Yeah, my two favorite quotes that one is along in line with that is it's a Japanese proverb I think which is or Japanese saying which is fall down seven times but get up eight. And
Mm.
I think I'm on 13 or 14 by now, but it is that just that willingness to get up and keep going. And yeah, no, I think that's really important about learning. It's it's a reason that we take, and I'm really keen that we take a coaching approach to working with our clients, people. Which for me, the differentiation for me between a mentor and a coach is a mentor typically has been where we want to get to, so they might be 5, 10 years ahead. They've done it, and they'll share their knowledge, but often a mentor's been on a quite an interesting journey themselves. So following their journey isn't necessarily the best thing, but great for identifying where the snakes and crocodiles are on our journey. It's like, yeah, you might want to watch out going over there because we tried that and that didn't work that well. That's really fabulous. But identifying, so coaching for me is helping individuals actively go and get knowledge from different sources, but get them to put together their route and their plan that they'll focus on. Because again, linking something you said, let's focus on our strengths rather than try and support our weaknesses. Let's
Yeah.
find other people who a colleague of mine put it really well recently. She said if you and for me it's quite a visual thing, but if you draw a line here and our weaknesses are below and our strengths are above, if we focus on strengthening our strengths, the strengths have a chance of becoming world class. They're here.
Mm.
If we can get them another 25% better, we might become world class in that area. If we strengthen a weakness by the same amount, the best we're probably going to be is okay.
Yeah.
So why bother? I mean, really, why bother? The best we're going to be is okay at it. Why? And I fundamentally believe most of us, well, the human condition is designed that we like what we're good at. And we're good at what we like, and the quicker we sort of accept it and move on and just say, so I need people in these gaps to fill these gaps, whatever that
Yeah.
looks like. And in some cases, even in leadership, and I've worked with clients who have gone, you know what, I'm just not great. I'm great getting stuff done, and I've created this business, and it's my business. But I want someone that's the face of the business, or someone that's going to lead the team. Because although I've created an amazing business, I'm not necessarily someone that wants or likes leading the people. And it's just being conscious. I think the ability to be really self-conscious about what we're good at and what we're not is cool. Um,
Yeah.
so just looking forward, Sandy, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you face, if any?
Um, so the ideal future for us would be to have a fully fledged platform that is focused on having the easiest way to find the resources that you need
Yes.
to succeed with your R&D project within any space of science.
Yep.
That's a long-term goal. And then in the shorter term, we want to grow our team and branch out into more different kind of customer channels.
Yep.
So, for example, you mentioned about VCs, and I said that we don't really look for VC funding. I mean, if the right investor came along, then sure.
Yep.
But what we'd actually like to do is speak to intermediaries like VCs or like accelerators and say, look, you've got these great companies in your portfolio. And you want them to succeed, obviously. The companies want to succeed, and they have these great ideas for, wearables or biotech drug discoveries or new therapies. Why not employ us as a partner to help them succeed and find out what expertise they need to actually take
Oh,
off and innovate as fast as possible? So we'd like to be a kind of like go-to place for certain intermediaries like VCs or like scientific networks or like conferences, and be partners with them and say, you've got this idea, it's fantastic. The sooner it happens, the better. Why not collaborate with someone, and why not do that collaboration through Pathways?
that really raises some really interesting points. So there's several people I'd like to introduce you on that basis. As I say,
That'd be great.
I work with investors and investment networks, and what you just said makes absolute sense. It's like, well, we know we want to do this, but this particular bit, we're not quite sure. We're gonna have to find out if we want a better. Well, let's not find out. Let's find the expert. Um, uh,
Exactly, yeah, and it doesn't have to be this whole project off the ground. Like even if it's a proof of concept that needs developing, or consulting services just to find out what the landscape of that product is.
yes,
So, for
absolutely.
example, there was a company that we were speaking to, and they had this idea for. I can't go into too much detail, but basically, it was a way to stop a very high mortality rate kind of thing that happens in hospitals quite a lot.
Yep.
And they had this like, really interesting idea for it. But obviously, there's not much research on it. We just know kind of like it does affect a lot of people, and there's a lot of deaths because of this thing.
Yep.
But the science behind the solution that they wanted to implement wasn't really there. So we can like look at these trends, look at the research, find out in different regions of the world what happens and why is the mortality rate higher here or less there, and
Wow.
who's published findings on these things, just to give that landscape. So it hones in on the focus of where it should be and who's at the forefront of going to know where to develop it next. So it's all pieces of the puzzle that we can kind of help with. So yeah, I mean, speaking to anyone who has those kind of companies with those kind of ideas, that lacks the research or lacks that holistic view of the
Brilliant.
academic research around it is anyone we're interested in talking to.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Oh well, yeah, we must talk after the after we finish on that one. Wonderful. And finally, Sandy, I'm keen to know what advice you'd give an 18-year-old you if you're able to go back in time and do so.
Um, First of all, I'd tell him to listen to me, not everyone else around them. So at 18, I was, really not sure what I wanted to do. I just kind of listened to, adults around me just being like, "Yeah, you should do this," rather than listening to the 18-year-old that was saying, "Oh, you should do this. It's really cool." It's not great for like career progression or anything like that. But yeah, I think just 18-year-olds are smarter than people give them credit for, more emotionally aware than people give them credit for. And I think, telling him that, not everyone has the answers, like you should trust yourself a bit more,
Brilliant.
would be the best advice I could give.
Sound advice for us all at any age, I'd suggest. And well, Sandy, it's been fascinating talking to you, and I really could talk for a lot longer. But for now, thank you so much for your time. And for anyone that would watch and would like to get in touch with you or Pathways, what would be the best way of doing that?
You can go to the website at pathwaysopen.com, or you can look me up on LinkedIn, and there's a link to Pathways there, and you can message us through either of those platforms.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, look, as I say, it'd be great to swing by another 6, 12 months and just see how that hockey stick curve's going. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.